B'Nissan nigalu, b'Nissan asidim ligoel. This is Rabbi Yeshua the Tana in Maseches Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Aleph, telling us something vital, telling us that the whole story of Pesach and Leyl Seder, talking about the Geula of Mitzrayim 3,500 years ago, actually contains within it the Shoresh, contains within it what we might call today a template of the future Geula of Klal Yisrael. The Geula Acharoina, the ultimate redemption of Klal Yisrael, is actually rooted in Leyl Seder. Somehow Leyl Seder contains that particular spiritual energy, which eventually will result in the Geula Acharoina. Interestingly, in the Psukim dealing with Pesach, we find this idea in the writings both of the Sforno and the Balaturim on the Pasuk, Leyl Shimurim hu L'Hashem. In chapter 12, Pasuk 42, at the end of all the halachas of Pesach, the Pasuk says, Halaylo hazeh L'Hashem Shimurim l'kol b'nei Yisrael. The Torah has a unique description for Leyl Seder. It's not an ordinary night. It's a Leyl Shimurim. Well, I'd like to have a closer look for a few moments at that phrase. So, as I say, on one level, it means that it's a night that is put aside for a future redemption of Klal Yisrael in La'osid Lovei. That's the Sforno and the Balaturim. However, Rashi says Shimurim means protection from Mazikim. That Klal Yisrael in every generation need protection from Mazikim. Some people think Mazikim means some sort of demons and evil spirits, but actually Mazikim is a general term which refers to all the forces in the world that potentially could damage us, whether it's viruses and plagues and illnesses are Mazikim, whether they are anti-Semites, whether it's hatreds and jealousies within the community and the family, whether it's V'lamalshinim, whether it's people who spread lies and false rumors, all these are Mazikim, and we need protection from Mazikim. And Leyl Seder has a special power to protect us from those Mazikim, says Rashi. That's the Peshat Leyl Shimurim hu L'Hashem. And in actual fact, it finds its way into halacha in a certain detail that we say Kriyas Shema al Hamita every night to protect us from Mazikim. And the halacha is on Leyl Seder, you don't need to say Kriyas Shema al Hamita, because the protection is there already on account of the Seder itself. That's Rashi. The Ramban says a lot, but among what he says is that Leyl Shimurim means it's a night that we preserve the emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not about God protecting us, it's about us protecting the presence of the Shekhinah, the emunah that we have in our mind and in our heart, and transmitting it to the next generation. That is the Shemirah of Leyl Seder, and that is the special uniqueness of Seder night. And this is something that we should say at an introduction when you're beginning Leyl Seder, even before you make Kiddush. That tonight is a night where we are protecting and preserving that emunah of 3,500 years in our own hearts, and we're transmitting it on to the next generation. And that is these are the two different Perushim, Rashi and the Ramban. What's interesting is, if you look at the Kli Yakar manages to bring these two together. And that's always a beautiful aspect of the Kli Yakar. Of course, the Kli Yakar follows in the derech of his Rebbe, the Maharal of Prague, that he says that actually these two meanings of Shemirah are mutually enhancing. In other words, the Shemirah is a mutual relationship that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Within Pesach itself, the word Shemirah appears as Shemartem as HaMatzos, that we have to protect the matzos, not just the physical object of the matzahs from becoming chametz, but the whole meaning of matzah and the emunah of matzah we have to protect. And as a result of which, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will protect us from mazikim. That is a connection between us. And he brings down a very, very beautiful model of this in the Medrash, where he speaks about two psukim, both of which speak about a light, a ner. On one posuk is, Ki ner mitzvah v'Torah or. The Torah itself is compared to a light and a candle, a source of illumination. That is one aspect of the ner. The other aspect of the Ner is Ner Hashem Nishmas Odom, a pasuk in Mishlei, which speaks about the neshama of the human being being a Ner. And that's why indeed we light, for example, a Yahrzeit light because of that pasuk. Says the Nekliyakar, in the name of the Medrash, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Klal Yisrael, here comes a very beautiful poetic line. The Medrash brings down this idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kivayachol says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Neiri biyodecha v'nerecha biyodi. My light, meaning the Torah, is in your hands to be shemeret, to protect it. V'nerecha biyodi. And your light, meaning the neshama, is in my hands to give you a shemira, to protect you from mazikim. And that is the reciprocal relationship of shemira that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which comes to its highest point on Leyl Seder. Leyl Shimurim hu Hashem, we have to engage in protecting that emunah, protecting that sense of the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our midst, the presence of the Shekhinah, and preserving that and transmitting it to everybody else around the Seder table. And then the promise is it'll be a Leyl Shimurim LaHashem, it'll be protected from the Mazikim, and not only from the Mazikim, but as I mentioned earlier, the Baraturim and the Sforno both bring down this Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Aleph, that B'Nissan Nigalu, B'Nissan Asidim Legoel, that the Leyl Seder is preserved by HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the sheirish of the Geula, and that's indeed why we say at the end of the Leyl Seder, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim habenuya, because of this view of Rabbi Yeshua, that the Leyl Seder itself is the sheirish, is the root out of which the eventual Geula will grow b'mher of Yameinu Amen.